Okay, comrades, welcome back to the Man Cave for an Invasion Day special. Got the old Hawks and Skins Against Bigotry t-shirt on, and today I'm going to be talking to you about why I am not a Christian, which is apposite since so many of the fash who don't like the term Invasion Day and celebrate 26th of January are Christians. And I'll be touching on an incongruity there. The title, Why I'm Not a Christian, is borrowed of course from Bertrand Russell, one of my favourite philosophers. I don't agree with everything he said, but who didn't agree with everything he said? He was quite often prone to contradict himself and change his positions. Why I'm not a Christian? Well, I guess when you think about someone like Bertrand Russell, he wrote a tract which was more about universally applicable arguments. And I'm not going to do that. I don't operate on the same level as Russell. I operate on a DIY level. And Instead of doing that, I'm going to look at my own experience of Christianity and of Christianity as it works in everyday life. And there's a definition down below of what I mean by everyday life. And so some of my evidence in what follows will be anecdotal. And I can't necessarily apply what follows to other authoritarian, official, institutionalised religions. Nor can I really even apply it to lots of other Christian experiences of Christianity, though I will be using examples which seem to support what I'm saying from outside my own circle of acquaintances and my own schooling and so on. But I strongly suggest that what I have to say is of broader applicability, and I leave it to you, the viewer, to do so if you so see fit. Now, there's a book by Michael O'Connor, which I'll link under the video, which argues that the purpose of Catholic education, I'm an Irish Catholic Australian, it's my background, it was to get people from the working classes into the professional classes. And when I read that book, I found it quite convincing, and I found it matched with my own personal experience of Christianity. And here's what I'm going to say in short about why I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Christian because you're not meant to be. That is, even the Christians, to a great extent, acknowledge the idea that you're not really supposed to believe in the doctrines which are associated with what I'll term brotherly love. And they're doctrines like turn the other cheek, don't care about material possessions, do unto others as you would have do unto you, and so on. And now I don't want to, in this video, really question the validity of these doctrines. I think they're certainly problematic. For instance, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Well, let's say I'm a masochist who enjoys being beaten. That then seems to give me the right to go out and beat others. So you get these kind of counterintuitive outcomes from some of it. And love thy neighbour as thyself. Well, Nietzsche said, love the distant man. It's better. But so there are problems with these doctrines. But that's not really the point. The point is that I want to make is that you're not really supposed to believe in them. And the way this works is that if we take Michael O'Connor's book, then what we're thinking about in terms of Catholic education, and what my experience of Catholic education was of a much more agonistic and a much more even vicious sort of mentality, whereby you act towards others as you need to do in order to get to the top, or in order to attain a middle class profession, middle class position. And you know, I mean, I remember when I went to a school called Darramarlin, which is a notorious pedophile ring, by the way. But anyway, Harvard, a notorious pedophile ring. But anyway, we'll leave that aside. That there'd be a guy strumming on a guitar about sweet Lord Jesus and the love of the neighbour, and then you'd go into your pastoral care. Pardon me, it's not COVID. Pastoral care session, and Mr. Such and Such would say, "Look out there, it's bugger you, Jack," which is what we all were really supposed to believe. So what we were really supposed to believe was that you paid lip service to this stuff, but it was only someone who was really stupid and naive who actually believed it. Well, I'm not saying this is a conspiracy. I just think that people actually... I mean, I don't have a problem with conspiracies, as you'll know if you've watched my channel, but that's a side issue again. What I'm trying to say is that people were given a series of prompts whereby they could understand that you're not really supposed to believe this stuff. Now, let me before I go further, let me return to this idea of everyday life that I put under here. Like, I'm not talking about official theology, although this kind of anecdotal everyday experience could inform official theology and be informed by it. And a lot of what I talk about today, I've never found in theology, though I've read a bit of theology. I won't say I'm an expert, but I'm a semi-educated layperson in theology. But that's not the issue. I guess we're kind of talking about a sort of an everyday, almost proto-theoretical level, which perhaps more official theology wants to forget. Anyway, you weren't really supposed to believe it, but in any system such as this, where you've got this kind of pretense and where there's just lip service to something, you haven't got a foolproof system, right? I mean, there's always going to be some idiots who take it too seriously. And I think that gives you a reason for it, in fact, that you can weed out those who ask too many questions and think too much. I think there's an underlying anti-intellectualism operational here, by which you can weed out the thinkers, and you can do things with them, To riff back on the Michael O'Connor, the book that I mentioned before about getting Catholic education being about going into the professional classes. What you're looking at sort of integrating with capitalism, capitalist exploitation more broadly. That's the way I'd see it. And you can use people who are stupid or autistic or whatever they are enough to take it seriously in a number of ways. They can become Pentecostal radicals, or you can just kind of figure out who they are and put them in the loony bin, or you've got options there. The system's got options, the system, and it sort of perpetuates itself, right? There's not even, I don't know how much need there is for a kind of a thought out conspiratorial driver to this system, but anyway, that probably exists as well. It's not the central issue here. I'm not talking about a conspiracy theory, though, as I say, I'm not against them. So, okay, what happens now? Well, there are a couple of fail-safes that I think fall into place on this kind of pre-theoretical level against people actually to deal with people actually taking all this kind of brotherly love stuff that you're not really supposed to believe too seriously. And one of the fail-safes is about the Fall. I don't mean the band. We'll talk more about the Fall. And one of the fail-safes is what I'm going to talk about as religion as a trolley problem. But before I go there, this thing about fail-safes is important because why I'm not a Christian? Well, you're not meant to be a Christian. No one really believes it, and it's not a serious doctrine. And further, the fail-safes that are employed when people are put in context whereby this awkward truth might be revealed are not convincing either. And since there's no other reason external to the kind of system of Christianity to believe in it, I'm certainly not a Christian. And in fact, there's good reasons, such as the existence of God violating the principle of sufficient reason to not believe in it. But again, that's a different topic. So the fail-safes. One idea is, well, look, we should believe in brotherly love, in not caring where we, not worrying too much about worldly possessions, in turning the other cheek and so on. But unfortunately, we're fallen entities, and this is a kind of a Platonistic higher ideal which we can't live up to. Naughty. So then if you get in a context whereby the idea that you're not meant to believe in this stuff becomes too obvious, where maybe people are questioning it, kind of people I talked about before, or whether as a result of a political activity, say for instance launching a war or hating on gays when you're supposed to love others and not kill them, and you might be George Bush Jr. launching a mass murdering war, or you might be your local Christian thug wanting to bomb abortion clinics, terrorists, or bash gays. Then there might arise contexts where you need these fail safes, because people do say, but hang on, aren't we supposed to? I mean, usually you're just supposed to dismiss it, right? Usually you're supposed to go. Well, what usually happens, this is on an anecdotal basis, and the way I experienced it working, is that you just simply know that you're not supposed to believe in it. But then that whole charade, that whole idea that you're not supposed to believe in it in some contexts, becomes too blatant, and you need these fail safes. So we can't live up to it. We're fallen. Now I mean, this idea of a fall and human beings not living up to these ideals is just problematic in a lot of ways. I mean, we're talking about a myth that was written 2,700 years ago, and which refers to ways of living which predate that. It would have been an oral tradition predating that, and it's a funny thing to believe into today, that we're fallen in some sense. But look, what I'll say about this is that there's an even deeper problem here, and it's that, like, look, if you haven't lived up to the Christian ideals that you're supposed to live up, of brotherly love, of turning the other cheek, of being meek and mild, I haven't really adumbrated the cluster explicitly, but I'm sure you know what I mean. If you haven't lived up to that, then you can say, well, look, I'm a fallen entity, and the fail-safe would kick in there, I guess. But then the problem is, people keep planning. A Christian like George Bush might plan to invade Iraq, or a Christian thug might plan to bash gays, or a Christian terrorist bomb an abortion clinic. And then that kind of idea of planning, well, the planning could also be that we're fallen, but gee, that fail-safe seems to have quite a limited degree of applicability, and I've got to say that it sounds like just another thing that you're really not meant to believe, but you sort of throw it out there. And if you're not even meant to believe it, and there's no good reason to believe it independently of that, well, I'm not buying. Now I come to the second fail-safe, which I think it lurks. It's a funny thing, right? Because I think it's the second fail-safe is the trolley problem, and the trolley problem is a thought experiment from philosophy. But I think, like many thought experiments from philosophy, it pumps intuitions that people have in everyday life. And I think what happens is that in instances where it becomes obvious that you're not really meant to believe in brotherly love, that only fools and idiots believe in it, that instead you can pump this trolley intuition, and you can get an idea that oh no, no, we are doing the right thing. You know, I've just cruised along thinking you're not supposed to believe it. I've come to this problematic context where that idea that it's all just bullshit, that you shouldn't really, that no one really with any sanity buys into, a problematic context, that denial is problematized, and so then I draw on this kind of intuition to help me out and coast through. And coast is an appropriate word. Okay, so the intuition is what I call the trolley problem, and here's how it roughly works. Now, there's this thought experiment in philosophy whereby if you're you've got a car with, say, 10 people on it it's on a trolley track. It's on a railway track, and it can either go to a dead end, over a cliff face. All 10 people die. This is just one version of the trolley problem, but it'll do. Or you can switch it and it'll run over an innocent person and kill that one person, but the 10 people will be all right. And it's kind of a trolley problem. You're like, oh, I don't want to kill the innocent one person tied up on the tracks by a villain, but hang on, I don't want the 10 people to die, so I have to, the trolley problem suggests that you have to switch and kill the innocent person. Now, how does religion work how does Christianity, in the sense I'm talking about it, work as a trolley problem? Well, what happens is, as I say, you're not supposed to believe this crap, but then this is kind of problematized, and you're like, oh, right, so we're going to go and bomb people over in Iraq, or we're going to go and bash some gays, or we're going to go and blow up an abortion clinic. So how do we reconcile this? We're put in a context where we're not even supposed to believe this stuff, but in this context, that disbelief gets reconciled. Someone calls us out on it, say. And I think what a fundamental intuition that comes out here is that, well, it's a trolley problem. Like, I could, just as I'm trying to save life by sending the trolley over the track in which one person dies instead of over the cliff where the 10 person dies. So I'm promoting brotherly love by violating brotherly love. So sanctity of life, I'm promoting the sanctity of life by violating the sanctity of life in the classic trolley problem. And the same thing, I'm promoting brotherly love by violating brotherly love. Now, I've been a bit circumspect in this video, and I think that you will probably understand that circumspection. I've got limited life experience, but I'm going to say this. I suspect a lot of religion, a lot of the actions of the religious, especially Christians with their brotherly love tenets, are this kind of trolley problem, because they're always going out and killing, and we found that it's not a matter of the fall and sin and human evil. What is it then? What is it then when they actually are called to account, are called to match their actions with their ideals? They're not usually. So the trolley problem perhaps isn't commonly. That's why the trolley problem is not commonly associated with religion. But I think it's one way that they match it up with the trolley problem, and so they're violating the statute of brotherly love, but only to promote brotherly love in the longer term. Okay, so what's the problem with that? Well, look, the main problem with that is that when you've got a philosophical thought experiment like a trolley problem, then everything's pretty clear. Okay, everything's pretty clear. Like, you've got the two tracks in the thought experiment. Sets up the two tracks. Either the 10 people can die going over the cliff, or the one person can die when you switch the trolley so it goes over the other track. Okay, everything's pretty clear. But of course, in real life, when you go to apply the intuition upon which the trolley problem draws, that you're furthering brotherly love by violating it. Well, things aren't that clear anymore, right? They don't become that clear. You know, I can say you're violating brotherly love, and maybe I'm twisting my interpretation of you, your actions and your words. Maybe I'm misrepresenting the facts. Maybe I'm, yeah. So it's a lot less clear than a kind of a standard thought experiment. And there are various things that can go wrong when I claim that you're not obeying the tenet of brotherly love. Now, of course, you might well not be, and that's certainly a possibility. But then, remove the log in your own eye before you see the speck in your brother's. I mean, in order for this trolley problem justification to work out, you'd have to be making sure that you're not falling foul of the same problems, and that you're not the one who should be subject to the trolley problem. And again, we get these questions of fact and interpretation and so on in it, so it rapidly gets very murky. So I think what happens with this murkiness is that, like, the whole trolley problem doesn't really fly as a fail-safe against the fact that you're really not supposed to believe in brotherly love, and if you do, you're supposed to fall back on a fail-safe like this trolley problem. So I guess the conclusion that I want to draw is that why I'm not a Christian? I'll tell you why I'm not a Christian, because Christianity isn't even proposed as a serious doctrine by Christians. There's certainly no external reason for it, and the fail-safes that Christians use when it becomes clear that they're not even really meant to believe in their own tenets of brotherly love, those fail-safes are fail and are unconvincing.